Welcome again to A Vision for Willis Woods. We're really excited to talk with you all and hear your feedback on this exciting opportunity. So my name is Ella. I'm a senior land use planner at MAPC. We're the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We're a public agency serving the 101 cities and towns of the Boston area. And what we'll be discussing tonight is introductions. So we'll talk about who the project team is, and then we'll really give a background of what are we talking about when we're talking about Willis Woods and what are the exciting opportunities before us. We'll go through maps and images and things like that. And then we'll hear from all of the project partners, the town planners and nonprofit staff who've been working on this project thus far. And then most importantly, we'll hear from you. So throughout the meeting, we're going to try to have some interactive surveying so that we get your feedback throughout the meeting, but then we'll have time at the end for discussion. So with that, I believe that Representative Jones, we're honored with Representative Jones' attendance at this meeting. So just wanted to thank you so much for your support for this project and for open space efforts, and wanted to turn it over to you if you're interested in giving remarks to kick it off this evening.
Yeah, Ella, thanks for having me. Hope you can hear me, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to say a few words tonight. I won't take long. I am very excited about the Willis Woods project and the vision because it covers three of the four communities I represent. It's an exciting opportunity to undertake a collaborative regional long-term preservation of just hundreds of acres of land shared by four communities, protecting drinking water, enhancing passive recreational opportunities for residents. A while back, we had Linfield's request for an MAPC grant to facilitate the development for the vision. We were successful in getting that grant. Subsequent to that, we were applied for an MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant, for the Richardson Green parcel, which we filed, and then we were able to arrange a site visit with the Environmental Affairs Secretary, Katie Theoridis, in May, so she could see firsthand the vision, the opportunity, and then that successfully led to the $1.6+ million grant that Linfield was awarded in August, and now Linfield has put in place the financial resources to exercise its right of first refusal. And obviously this piece of land, Richardson Green, represents a key component of the vision for Willis Woods. So I want to thank all the local officials, MAPC, individuals and officials from Linfield, Middleton, North Reading, Peabody, who've been working, meeting, becoming experts in Zoom and meeting remotely, and look forward to hopefully continuing this project to move forward so that we can all enjoy it, not just as a picture on a iPad or computer screen, but something that you can visit personally, enjoy personally, and understand that it's much more than a picture on a screen, but it's a vital natural resource on the river, near the river. And as we talk about climate change and some of those issues that we face, that this is a natural way of addressing some of those issues, along with providing recreational opportunities, protecting our water supply, and really, I think, building something for current generations to leave to future generations. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Ella. Thanks.
Perfect introduction. Thank you so much for your support and attendance this evening.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll actually turn it over to Emily, the Linfield planner.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Representative Jones, for joining us, at least for the beginning and kicking us off. I think you hit quite a few of the highlights of what we're going to talk about tonight. So my name is Emily Kenmotori, and I am the Director of Planning and Conservation for the town of Linfield. With me tonight, I have two staff members from my office. We have Jennifer Welter and Susan Lamb. As a team, we do a lot of different things, but they have been very supportive on this project. So I wanted to be sure they were recognized and here with me tonight. And I'm going to go through and tell you all the other folks who are here from our other towns. From the town of Middleton, we have Katrina O'Leary, the town planner. From North Reading, we have two representatives, Danielle McKnight, their planner, and Phil Hertz from the Land Utilization Committee. From the city of Peabody, we have Brendan Callahan, the Assistant Director of Planning. From our nonprofit partners, we have Chris Lapoint, the Director of Land Conservation from Essex County Greenbelt. And we have Patrick Lynch, the Director of Policy and Planning from the Ipswich River Watershed Association. And of course, you already met Ella Wise from MAPC, who also has some support staff here tonight to help us get through Zoom, which is wonderful. Thank you, Christian, and others that might be in the background that I haven't seen yet. So we're excited to have you all here. I think we also have some of the major landholders present as well. This area we're going to talk about tonight does have a lot of public ownership, but it also has some private ownership. So I believe as we move through the discussion tonight, hopefully we'll hear some from some of those private owners as well. So with that, we're interested to know a little bit about who's here. We had an astounding pre-registration list of over 100 people, which is really exciting for a regional effort like this. So Ella's going to teach us how to do some interactive polling so we can find out who's here tonight.
Great,
So
thank you,
Ella?
Emily. Yeah, so we're going to test this out and hopefully we'll be using this throughout the evening. We do this often in public meetings, so just bear with me. Okay, so we have this interactive poll, and the easiest way to get there is if you have a smartphone nearby to open a new browser window, which is just a new internet, however you get to the internet, and go to pollev.com/MAPC poll. So I'll wait for everyone to do that. And if you don't have a smartphone, something like an iPhone nearby, you can also click on the link, and we'll be sure to add the link to the chat. Didn't see it quite there yet, but if you could add that, Christian, that'd be great. And you can also just click that link and a new window will appear. So again, just the easiest way is to get your smartphone, if you have one, and go to pollev.com/MAPC poll. If you don't have a smartphone, or if you're on your smartphone already, you can click on the link in the chat. Okay, so looks like folks are already there. So you should see, where do you live? So we're just trying to get an understanding of who's here in the room. 51 folks, that's really exciting. Looks like most people are hailing from Linfield, which makes sense, but nice representation from North Reading, outside of these 4 towns, and Peabody. Thank you all so much. So this is a good test case for this interactive activity. We'll be using this throughout the evening to kind of get a sense of the crowd. If you're frustrated and having a hard time with this, no problem. I'm sorry for that, but we don't want any more frustration. So you can also try texting to this number 22333 MAPC poll, and that will log you into this. Or use the chat to provide feedback. We will certainly look at the chat. And if none of those options, or if all those options sound frustrating to you, then jot down your answer on a piece of paper, email it to us in the morning, and we'll be sure to consider it. I don't want technology to be a barrier. Great. Okay. So now we can, we'll go back to some interactive polling, but we'll dig right into what is Willis Woods, and I'll hand it back to you, Emily.
Thank you, Ella. I hope everybody found that to be not too hard. So just to quickly, how we ended up here and where Willis Woods is. And I just, when I first got to Linfield over 3 years ago, I spent a lot of time looking at maps. That's what I do. Planners look at maps. And this area, North Linfield, I was like, what is up there? And I never knew my whole life growing up in the North Shore that the Ipswich River came through Linfield. I didn't know that. So I was astonished to find that out. The first time I walked in these woods and found the Ipswich River, I was astonished at how beautiful it was. And so it just got me thinking about this whole area and what was up there. We also went through a process in Linfield of trying to determine where we might have a rail trail. We have 2 abandoned rail beds in town, and this area was considered, but at first it was put aside because nobody was sure if the towns on either side of us wanted to move forward. So it was sort of tabled for a while. And so there was all these things, and we have all these studies and all this stuff about this area, but nothing ever led to anything. And so through some conversations with other folks and some encouragement from some trail enthusiasts at MAPC, they encouraged Linfield to join with our surrounding communities to look for some technical assistance to kind of create a vision for what Willis Woods could mean and what it could be for both Linfield as well as the surrounding towns that all abut this beautiful area. So the question is where is it and what is it? So on this map, it's, you know, we're pretty zoomed out, but you can see that it's a big portion of the northern part of Linfield. There's also parcels, undeveloped parcels that are in North Reading and Peabody and Middleton. So we show here in green mostly what's in Linfield, but there is adjacent land contiguous to Willis Woods beyond our borders. And we want to look at the area as a whole. In terms of the Ipswich River watershed, it's the largest area in the upper Ipswich River watershed that's undeveloped, which is, for the watershed folks, super important. Much of the land is owned by the Linfield Center Water District because it is in our watershed overlay and wellhead protection area. Some of it's also owned by the Conservation Commission. And then we have some large private owners, a golf course, the Bostic property, and another parcel which Brad Jones referenced, which the town is in the process of purchasing, which otherwise was scheduled to be a 15-lot subdivision. So up until now, this area, because of its ownership and where it is, didn't really have any public access. So a lot of people don't even know it's there. And we're looking to see if we can change that. So the reason why suddenly there's this interest is multifaceted. One, we have this acquisition of the Richardson Green parcel, which provides direct access into this larger area from Main Street. That's something we haven't had before. We also had a change in leadership at the Linfield Center Water District, and who was willing to entertain the idea of the watershed area being open for passive recreation. And that's a huge shift after many years of that not being the case. So that opened up a lot of possibilities to talk about. And so as Brad said, and I've mentioned, this parcel that's shown here on this map is potentially the gateway. And once we learned that we were going to be able to purchase this with the help of Greenbelt, or Greenbelt purchasing it with our help, depending on how you look at it, Chris, I realized that it was really time to talk about the greater Willis Woods area, because we had this opportunity to actually get into these woods. So that's really what got this effort started. And so here we are, a vision. We're trying to figure out what we should do with this fantastic location, and how we can protect it and potentially use it in a positive way. And not just for Linfield, but for all the folks who that come near it, or can walk to it on a sidewalk, or can get to it on a bike trail. We want Willis Woods to be a resource for the region. And that's why we're here tonight with all 4 communities, as well as our nonprofit partners. And we've invited all you residents to be here because we want to hear from you. And I think Ella's going to walk us through how MAPC helps communities create a vision.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so it's a pretty basic process where we understand what's on the ground right now, assess the existing conditions, ownership and resources, which we'll go through together this evening. We bring partners together. We've met as town staff and nonprofit staff several times and actually had the luxury of visiting the land. We reach out to the community like we're doing this evening. And then based on your feedback and what we've learned through our research of existing conditions, we develop a vision for what we want this, how to protect this land in perpetuity, and what kind of recreational opportunities we might also be able to provide. And then we can kind of dig into the action steps based on that vision of what's going to actually advance the vision. What are some key steps that the towns can take to actually make this vision a reality? So I'm going to dig into some maps and some images. Hopefully we can do a site visit on the land at some point, but because it's not currently publicly accessible, we didn't want to do that first. So I'll be showing images and maps so we all get a sense of really what this area has. We're covering a lot of information, I realize that, so please add any questions to the chat. We're all ready to have time for question and answer. Okay, so this is an aerial image of the area. So Emily did a great job of introducing it. Let me get a little laser pointer. Okay, so this is what we're referring to as Willis Woods, this large forested area in the northern part of Linfield. You can see the town lines here. This is the Ipswich River. Here's the beautiful Sagamore Golf Course. Here's Richardson Green, which the town has received $1.6 million to protect. In terms of, so who owns this land, what's around it? This is the same image, but it looks different because it's not the aerial. It's showing you who owns this land. So most of it, as Emily explained, is owned by the Linfield Center Water District, and some parcels are town owned. So this whole green area is basically publicly owned and mostly protected, although not all of it is legally permanently protected, although certainly the intention is to protect it and to protect the Linfield water supply. You see here, Richardson Green, Sagamore Golf Course. So we're just highlighting some other, large areas of land to keep in consideration when we're thinking about the recreational opportunities for this space. So there's the existing Peabody Independence Greenway over here, a multi-use biking and walking path that's well used, well loved. Here is a factory on the river owned by Bostic, and then 2 undeveloped open space or 3 parcels owned by Bostic. So this is all privately owned. It's not publicly owned. And then there is some publicly owned land west of this forested area. So this is conservation land owned by North Reading. So these are important things to consider when we're thinking about the new opportunities of Willis Woods, is how could we actually leverage this other publicly owned land and recreational resource to have perhaps a contiguous trail and kind of a larger recreational area. And as Emily mentioned, there's this gorgeous existing rail bed through this land. So it's kind of this hidden gem that we were lucky enough to visit a few weeks ago. So there was a railroad that ran through this area, and that's what the Independence Greenway is on. And then there is this basically rail trail that's not currently open to the public. And here's images of what exists in northern Linfield right now. In addition, there's the beautiful Ipswich River. So here's some images again that we took a few weeks ago. The Ipswich River runs along this northern boundary here. So some of these images were taken in Middleton, as well as in North Reading, but there's beautiful oxbow on the northern side of Willis Woods along here. In addition, on our site visit, we took photos of the existing bridges in the area. So the city of Lynn owns a small parcel right in the bend of the river here, and they have access through their City of Lynn bridge to that water infrastructure. There's also a pedestrian bridge on the western side in North Reading. We also saw during our site visit signs of ATV or 4-wheeler use. This is currently a prohibited use on the Water District land, as well as the North Reading land, without the explicit permission of the town administrator. So it's an important consideration as we're thinking about the future recreational uses of this area. Some other important considerations, and this map can get confusing, so we don't need to spend too much time on it, but I just want to highlight, these are kind of the important things we're considering. Of course, Linfield's water supply, #1 priority, really. So there are well fields in the southern portion of the Water District land. The City of Lynn has a take along the river. And then this hatched area shows the wellhead protection zone. Basically, that means there's particular regulations about what can be developed and what uses there can be in this area. Another important consideration, of course, is habitat and wetlands. So when we're thinking about if we opening up this area to public access and building out this rail trail, where are the wetlands that we want to preserve? And there's a large, what's called least disturbed wetland complex kind of in the central area, as well as other wetlands throughout. So we would want to consider, of course, the natural resources. And here's the kind of exciting recreational opportunities. Okay, so I'm going to walk through this. So on this map has both existing recreational resources as well as potential. So on the eastern side, there's the Independence Greenway. This is an existing biking and walking trail that hopefully many of you have enjoyed. Then within Willis Woods is this existing, it's called the Lowell to Salem rail bed. So that's what I had showed photos of earlier, this beautiful, basically rail trail that's not formally open to the public right now. There are also walking paths, small walking paths that are currently there, but again, not formally open to the public. And then North Reading has efforts to plan for a future rail trail through the town of North Reading as well. So again, when we think about the potential for this large forested area, it's pretty exciting to think that there might be potential ways, again, only with the approval of Bostic, it's privately owned land over here, but potential ways to try to connect these trails, the existing Greenway and the future, hopefully, rail trail through Willis Woods, and then maybe even the rail trail through North Reading. But it's not only by land, it's also by river. So there, Patrick from the Ipswich River Watershed Association will talk about this later, but there is river access and a boat put in Ipswich River Park in North Reading upstream, as well as river access downstream in Ipswich, as well as efforts to remove a dam that actually is now on the Ipswich River right here by the Bostic factory. So potential for a long contiguous water trail for canoers or kayakers to get out on the river and enjoy it. So with that, we're going to try this activity again. To get a little sense, we just went through the explained Willis Woods and talked about what we enjoyed about it when we went out there and its resources and amenities. And love to know if you've ever been there. So one option is no, I didn't know that it existed. No, but I've kind of been curious. Yes, I've walked the area. Yes, I enjoy riding my ATV in that area, and other. All right, looks like folks are pretty familiar with it. And hopefully, yeah, have enjoyed how beautiful that rail trail is. Great, thanks, that helps to get a sense of things. So similarly, let me check the chat, see if anyone's frustrated by this. Looks good. Similarly, wondering if anyone's been on the Independence Greenway. So that's the existing walking and biking route, and Brendan will be interested. So we got, yes, I walk on it regularly. I bike on it a few times, looking forward to exploring it. All right, I think that we got some new takers for you, Brendan, through this meeting. Great, I'm glad that, yeah, this might be a good introduction to that resource for folks. And then finally, have you ever been on the river? I have not been, but interested if anyone has had access to it and kind of the potential for that. So yes, I've kayaked or canoed or fished along this particular stretch or along a different stretch. No, but I would love to, or maybe no, that's not really my thing. Great. Seems like people have gotten out on the river. That's wonderful. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so with that, we're gonna turn it over to the partners, so the town planners and the nonprofit staff, to talk more about the opportunities provided by this project from their perspective. So I'll turn it back to Emily.
Thank you, Ella, and thank you for those interesting poll questions. So I'd like to see who's here. So when we talked about partners, the partners each kind of giving a little bit of why are we here and what is it? Why are we participating? We sort of talked about opportunities and how this builds on other things that are going on in our towns. So I look at the vision for Willis Woods as a potential, obviously, for a huge passive recreational area for our residents as well as neighboring residents. And I'm also super concerned that we ensure the permanent protection of the watershed for both the river as well as the wellhead district for the drinking water wells in Linfield. And I'm sure Patrick Lynch will speak to this later, but the Ipswich River provides drinking water for a lot of people downstream. And it's important to, as a planner, to recognize the need for watershed protection. So right now, the water district owns a lot of the land, but it turns out there's no permanent conservation restriction on a lot of it, or on any of it for that matter, as well as the private parcels that are in the watershed. So I'm interested in being sure that we seek permanent protection of this area. I'm super excited about the potential for access to the Ipswich River in this stretch. I think it's a great opportunity that, like I said, when I introduced myself, I didn't even know the Ipswich River ran through this part of town. Certainly, as Ella mentioned, there's incredible habitat there, and we have a number of vernal pools and beautiful wetlands, and the protection would obviously lead to the protection of that habitat for wildlife. And obviously, keeping this area in a forested state to the maximum extent we can adds to our climate resiliency in Linfield. That was part of how we were successful in receiving the MVP funding for the acquisition of that 21 acres. So it was recognized certainly that forested land is part of those efforts to maintain our climate resiliency. And I, in particular, after having walked one of the Conservation Commission sites a few years ago that used to be a compost facility, it's in dire need of restoration and for a lot of reasons, but the ATVers have decided to turn the compost piles into a very interesting recreational area. And it's filled with invasive species, and I look forward to the ecological restoration of that area, as well as some other areas in town where there's a lot of erosion and some damage to the wetlands. So there's both fun things to happen and really good ecology and reasons to protect this area. And certainly in Linfield, there's this is all part of sort of a much bigger planning long-term effort. We have surveyed our residents many times for master plans, open space plans. Everybody always wants more passive rec. Everybody wants a place to walk. And I know if COVID taught us anything, getting outside and going for a walk was one of the, you know, Greenbelt and all the folks around us can tell you that that was everybody's need to find a place to walk increased tenfold during COVID. So I think that if we surveyed people again, we would get even stronger responses. The acquisition of and protection of areas in our wellhead district was one of our MVP goals. And so the acquisition of the Richardson parcel and as well as any protection of additional parcels are in line with our MVP plan. And obviously, as a planner, we always want to connect to things. And so the potential to have a trail network in Linfield that could lead to other towns is super exciting. And I know that each of the other surrounding towns have things in the works, whether they're sidewalks or bike trails or otherwise. Connections are always a super, I don't know, benefit of any trail network, being able to get even further along in your way. And again, I think I already mentioned this, but there are unprotected vulnerable parcels in this region, one of which we were successful. It was in chapter 61, and we have worked really hard in order to protect it from development. And there are other areas that are vulnerable, and I want to see what we can do to maximize balancing potential growth with preservation and certainly protecting the water supply. So with that, I think we're going to go and we're going to hear from each of our partners. So next, we're going to go to Brendan in the city of Peabody to talk about how he can connect to Willis Woods.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Brendan Callahan. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning at the City of Peabody. PBD is definitely excited to partner with all these neighboring communities. I think what we're most excited about with this project is advancing the Greenway network throughout the region, throughout Essex County and the North Shore. PBD currently has 2 segments of the Independence Greenway constructed. They were built in about 2010. There's one segment that is mostly in West Peabody, and one of the terminuses of the trailhead is right there at the Linfield Middleton line off of Russell Street. We also have another segment that is off of Lowell Street near the Peabody High School, and it goes from sort of the Peabody High School neighborhood all the way to the North Shore Mall. And we also have a third segment that is constructed at sort of the Route 1 on-ramp, off-ramp at Lowell Street, and that connects to the Danvers Rail Trail. So we've got 3 segments of constructed greenways in Peabody. They're heavily utilized. They're probably one of our most popular, passive recreational resources. And so, again, we're kind of creating this, Peabody is sort of this hub now of the region's Greenway network. And we're currently trying to advance 2 other segments of the bike path. We're currently in the design phase of connecting the 2 segments over Route 1. We are proposing a bridge that will connect kind of the 3 trailheads in the West Peabody by the high school and Lowell Street. And we're also advancing another segment of our bike path from the North Shore Mall to downtown Peabody. And then we have another Greenway project that's not part of the Independence Greenway, but it is connected to it in the downtown that will ultimately connect to the Riverwalk. It's our downtown Riverwalk, which will ultimately connect to Salem. So overall, it's almost 10 to 11 miles of greenways in the city of Peabody, connecting to Middleton, Linfield, Danvers, and Salem. So we're excited to work with these other communities and just expand that greenway network. I'm trying to think what else and so we're just, we're definitely excited to work with these guys, with Middleton and everybody. And, we think it's a great project that we can now start to work towards Middleton and Linfield and help them. And anything we can do to promote and support the development of these greenways is, I think, good for the entire region. So, thank you.
On the North Reading side, I'm Danielle McKnight from North Reading's town planner. On the North Reading side, adjacent to the Willis Woods area are several large parcels of town-owned land. And 4 of those properties were formerly Chapter 61A land, which the town acquired in 2005. And they, along with some other small town-owned parcels, total 48 acres. And a portion of this area is now known as Riverwood. The land contains many acres of wetlands and has a substantial conservation value. It's thought to have great potential for passive recreation. The Ipswich River runs through a portion of those parcels, so the surrounding land provides access to the river as well as protection of it, as long as the properties stay undeveloped or used in a manner consistent with protecting their sensitive natural resources, including the wetlands on the river. One of the challenges associated with that area is that it lacks a means of public access. And one of North Reading's goals over the last several years has been to find a way of allowing public access and to allow the public to enjoy these properties. Having the area connected to a larger conservation area would be of great value, possibly in enhancing access to the land, but also in adding to a larger regional open space asset. One way this area could possibly be connected to the larger Willis Woods area is through a rail trail that the town's land utilization committee is currently studying. And Phil Hertz from North Reading's LUC is here and can speak a bit more about the possible connection from North Reading into Willis Woods through a recreational trail.
Great. We've been working for 3 or 4 years now at a feasibility study to build the recreational trail in North Reading. A key component of it has always been to figure out a connection from North Reading into the Independence Greenway and the various other networks that feed off of the Independence Greenway. But it was difficult because of Linfield didn't want to allow public access. So the fact that this Willis Woods Commission is underway, and there's been a change of mindset within the water district, it's fabulous, and it probably means it's more likely that the North Reading Trail will happen, because orphan trails don't tend to succeed. Connectivity is everything. So the eastern end of the trail would be the town line of Linfield and North Reading, and we are considering connections from that point to Route 62 Elm Street. There's probably two logical connections. One would be through Linfield. There's in that northwest section of what you've seen as Willis Woods is actually not part of the water district. It's part of it's a conservation area within Linfield. And one possible eastern connection to the North Reading section of the abandoned rail bed would be, it would be on Route 62 in North Reading, going over where a bridge existed until the 1970s. It's long since washed away. And then it would proceed through a bit of the Keenan Conservation Area into North Reading. The other choice would be continuing from the rail bed due north through the town-owned land of North Reading and connecting to Elm Street, Route 62. The plan would be to have a trailhead with parking, which would give access not only to the North Reading lands, but it would give access to the Linfield lands as well. The overall plan for the bigger picture for the North Reading Trail is to figure out a way to get it from the abandoned rail bed, which is in the woods, get it through town and to connect into Ipswich River Park, and maybe potentially even to Route 28. And we're getting close to having the feasibility study complete with cost estimates, planning estimates, and hopefully that'll all be done in the next month or so. So I think that's it for me. The next speaker is Katrina from Middleton, who's on mute.
Thank you, Phil. When we're talking about what kind of benefits the Willis Woods recreational area would give to the town of Middleton, it's the access to this great amenity that would be the greatest benefit. And unfortunately, we don't have a sidewalk network that leads from Middleton down to the town line. Past efforts to plan future pedestrian and bicycle improvements in town have set the stage for annual progress to be made on a prioritized list of pedestrian improvements. And using the recommendations from our complete streets plan and our master plan, we also conducted a bicycle pedestrian network plan in 2017. We created a prioritized list of the places where we really needed sidewalks the most. And the area on the map in pink was one of the top priorities. I think it was second from the top on that list. So 2 nights ago, and it's really probably because of the Willis Woods project going on here, we figured that stretch was really high priority. And so we actually added it to the special town meeting that was held 2 nights ago. And the residents voted unanimously to fund the design of that sidewalk stretch. So we're hoping that if we quickly design it, we'll be able to possibly apply for some of the shared streets funds over the winter time. And it could be done as soon as midsummer, I'm hoping. So when that stretch of sidewalk is finished, it will offer a safe pedestrian connection from the Middleton Rail Trail, which is across the downtown, all the way to the Independence Greenway. Next slide. So in order to see the full effect of the Boston Street sidewalk section, you really need to pull back and look at the surrounding area. The completion of that sidewalk will offer Middleton residents a connection to both the Independence Greenway and the future Willis Woods recreational area. It will also connect the Middleton Rail Trail, which is that blue section, the royal blue section you see up above, down to the Independence Greenway. And then by 2026, the Middleton Rail Trail and the northern spur of the Danvers Rail Trail will be finished, creating a 12-mile loop through Danvers, Middleton, and Peabody, and also connecting to a large regional network of trails offering safe pedestrian and bicycle transportation. And next, I think we're going to hear from Patrick Lynch of the Ipswich River Water Authority.
All right, there we go. Awesome. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about this. This is maybe the most exciting project that we've been working on in the entire watershed. And I don't want to slight anybody trying to take down the dam in the town of Ipswich, but this is such a remarkable project, not only because we're talking about protecting the drinking water supply, and again, the Ipswich is the drinking water supply for 350,000 people on the North Shore. Not only that, and the trails and the access to the river and the recreational trails, but we're having 4 communities working together on a collaborative approach. And that's really what we need to do to protect the river. So in April of this year, the Ipswich was declared one of the most endangered rivers in the country by the national organization American Rivers. And it was the only one on the list not there for pollution. It's a very clean river, but the problem is we're just using too much water. So the best solution that we have to protect the endangered Ipswich is to protect the remaining open space and forested lands that we have, especially in the headwaters up here in Linfield and Middleton. These are some of the partners that you might hear in the press. If you're in Middleton, I'm sure you've heard of the Middleton Stream Team. They maintain the series of trails, the public landings that we'll look at in a second. We also manage the Pie Rivers Partnership and the Greenscapes North Shore Coalition together with our partners in Salem. These are exciting partnerships. They bring together all of the municipal planners, conservation agents, nonprofits, and federal and state agencies in the region. And again, for everybody, this is one of the most exciting areas that we've been working in. I guess next slide, quick. Thank you. So these are one of the maps that you will see if you were to explore the Ipswich River. We have kiosks up and down from the headwaters in Wilmington all the way down to Ipswich. And I know Ella mentioned this at the very beginning for those that were here, but you can actually get in your boat in Wilmington and paddle all the way out to the ocean. You have to get out at a couple spots in Portage, which isn't the most fun. But what will happen here with the South Middleton Dam that is now in the final removal permitting stages, in fact, there's a key meeting on this next week, is that we're going to be restoring one of the only, perhaps the only whitewater rapid in Greater Boston. And it's going to make this access point of the Ipswich accessible from North Reading, the Ipswich River Park, all the way through Middleton. And there's several beautiful public landings you can access in Middleton. So you can get in your boat, you can get out, go to different spots, and all the way out to Ipswich River Sanctuary in Topsfield without having to get out of the river. So this is a transformative region. We want more people to know the Ipswich. We want more people to enjoy the river. And we would love to hear different ways that folks would like to be able to access it aside from canoeing and kayaking. And I think we'll hear now about the trails from Greenbelt.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm Chris Lapoint. I'm the Director of Land Conservation with Greenbelt. Thus far, Greenbelt's primary focus is on land acquisition as part of the Willis Woods efforts. Greenbelt is the land trust of Essex County. We've helped to protect more than 18,000 acres across the county in our 60 years of existence. And our primary effort at this point is working in partnership with the town of Linfield on the acquisition of the Richardson Green property, which you've heard discussed a fair bit. So we're thrilled to be working in partnership with the town, with great support from our friends at the state, some private donors, and really great support from town leaders. And so as the maps indicate, one of the key reasons to protect the Richardson Green property is that it is, in addition to being a beautiful 21-acre wooded parcel that protects the wetlands, protects the water supply, it offers the opportunity to provide new access on a side of the woods where there really isn't access presently. Next slide, please. So just a close-up. Again, this is a great example of how partnership efforts can bring even fairly expensive land conservation projects into the realm of the possible. So a variety of funding sources, public funding, private funding, federal funding, state funding coming together. And we're really thrilled that this looks like it's going to come together in early 2022. Could go to the next slide, please. So I'd say just in brief for Greenbelt, our goals here, our hopes are obviously to work in partnership to protect the woods and the river as best we can, to work both on land that hopefully ultimately we own, but also in partnership with others to provide safe and accessible trails, and to work together over time to expand areas of protected land. So that means working with our public partners, but also having conversations with private landowners over time about the future of their land, about what some conservation options might be as they're ready to have those conversations. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ella or Emily, I'm not sure. Thank you.
Great. Yes, thank you everyone for those presentations. So now is the time for questions. So I don't see any questions in the chat yet. Please add your questions to the chat. And if folks are having a hard time with that, we'd be happy to just take questions from the audience as well. And then we'll have time for more feedback and discussion as well. So this is the time for just like, technical questions, clarifying questions. So David, have you received any questions?
Some have already been answered. So just looking here.
Great.
No questions
yes.
at the moment.
Okay. Christian, do you want to just explain how folks can unmute themselves just in case anyone's struggling with chat and does have a question they want to ask?
So if you would like to ask a question out loud, probably the easiest way to do this would be for you to raise your hand. And the way that you would raise your hand is in the bottom of your Zoom window, if you're on an iPhone or a computer, but in the top, if you're on a tablet, there should be a button that says reactions. It looks like a little smiley face with a plus sign on it. And if you click on that, one of the options will be to raise your hand. So if you would like to ask a question and don't necessarily want to speak in the, right in the chat, please feel free to do that way. But I am seeing that we have a couple of questions that have just come in. I'm sure David has seen this as well. So I will turn it back over to David. So if you would like to raise your hand, please do so, and we'll unmute you so you can ask a question.
I will start with the small parcel owned by Danvers on the west side. And there's a question about what that is. And I guess why Danvers owns a small parcel actually in several locations. Maybe you can go back to the property map and can help clarify that. Who would like to take that question? There you go. A couple sections there that Danvers owns.
I mean, I can. I'm not sure historically exactly why they own those lands. I suspect it has something to do with the fact that they own the water rights to the Swan Pond in North Reading, but those parcels, at least they are not contiguous with, they don't, there's no way to get from parcel to parcel to Swan Pond. So I think their legacy, at one point I had heard that Danvers was interested in perhaps working out a deal and giving them to North Reading. I don't think, at some point with the rail trail in North Reading, we're going to have to work out something with Danvers for at least that section in the south there that is the rail bed.
Oh, thanks, Phil. Walter Booth asked about how we get around a Bostic property, and that's a very good question that we're starting to engage with Bostic, but that'll take some time, and discussion on that, but there are some undeveloped parcels there. And so there is certainly a desire to see what options there are for conservation of those parcels. And what else that could be done with that. Does anyone else want to continue my response on that question?
David, I'll just comment a little bit.
Please.
I think that that's part of what this vision plan is. It's saying to everyone, if we want a contiguous path along the river or to connect Peabody to Linfield, how do we do it? That's part of why we're all here, is to best figure out the solutions for that. It might not be that we go through Bostic. It might be that we go around Bostic. It might be that we go up Main Street. It might be that we go on the other side of the river with a bridge. But that's why we're all here. It's certainly, it's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Everybody wants to get from one side to the other. And we have to work with them as a property owner and figure it out and do it in a safe way that's good for everybody. So I think that's certainly part of this process.
I would just note in terms of the rail trail, the Salem and Lowell line went from Salem to Lowell many years ago. And that was, much of the corridor is still intact, but also a number of parcels have been sold off for development or other uses. So we're trying to reconnect the rail bed as much as possible, but obviously we're not going to go through already developed parcels. So we may, traverse up to highways like 62 for the short sections to get back on the rail bed. But as Brendan Callahan from Peabody mentioned, in a couple of years, we'll have a continuous trail from Salem to the trailhead in Peabody right there on Boston Street. So our goal is to continue that west in some way, shape, or form. Kristen Grubbs asked, what is the hardest part of the effort so far? Who would like to take that? We're just starting, so I think we don't know yet, but anybody else wants to comment on that?
I guess maybe none of us think it's hard, but I'll say for me, it's awareness, getting folks to know what we're talking about and getting them interested. And I think tonight shows that we're doing a good job, that we have over 50 people here. We had over 100 people originally registered. People want to know and they want to be involved. And so I think we've gotten over that hurdle. I think so that was how, at the very beginning, that seemed hard, but I think we've gotten through that, and I think we'll continue to face challenges and get over them. So I think that from my perspective.
That's a great point, Emily. And I would just add that we will certainly, MAPC, just being our role is just to facilitate the conversation among partners. But I think I can speak on behalf of partners that all of you will make it a whole lot easier if you can tell your neighbors and your friends and the civic groups that you're part of, or the church groups, or the walking group of friends that need a new place to walk. That's really how we get the word out, is through all of you. So thank you for attending. Please stay involved. We'll talk about next steps at the end. So thank you again for being part of this and helping us get the word out.
There are two questions that have come up on funding for acquisition, as well as funding for maintenance and sort of trail work, as well as whether there would be opportunity from the infrastructure bill that was just passed or just signed at the White House. Anyone talk about funding opportunities? There'll be varied opportunities, obviously, but I think there's specific to be determined. But if anyone else has any comments there, we're just getting started on this process. So there are rec trails grants that can be used to develop the rail trail portion, some of the trail portion that's through DCR, the state parks agency. So there's opportunities there for funding. There are certainly separate opportunities for acquisition. The land trust being involved is really a leader in the acquisition component of this, and working on that. If some parcels are partially developed, there's opportunities for open space to come out of that. So
yeah, I could just speak to that briefly. I know that the question is probably partly about the development and maintenance of a potential rail trail, but to your point, David, that the funding opportunities for land acquisition are fairly varied, and so we look at each project as it comes. The funding opportunities change over time. So depending upon what the opportunity is, what the characteristics of the land are, you know, what the particular funding opportunities are at the time. We typically work in partnership with groups where we're able to use private funding or raise private funding. Generally, a local community puts some funding in, and then we usually work in partnership to attract state or federal funding. So we do our best to not put the full weight of the purchase price on any one entity's back.
I could just jump in for the city of Peabody. Is I think, you know, working with these communities, I think Peabody might have the most mileage of greenways. And I can just say that we, you know, there are a lot of grant funding opportunities out there, and it's you just, as they come on, it's really important that each community, you know, applies and seeks those fundings. And so I'm sure that's Linfield's plan for, you know, as they get to the next phase. Like once this phase is done, we'll have some action. The group will have action items, and then they'll try to figure out which funding or bucket or funding source is the most appropriate to seek. That's usually how it goes. You just try to find which funding source is available and matches the project. And as David mentioned, there are several, you know, Greenway and Trail Project grant programs out there. But I don't believe they carried a line item in the infrastructure bill for the Willis Woods project. I'll double check that for everybody though.
I think there can also be a lot of strength in competing for, especially state grants, when we do it in partnership as 4 communities. I think those tend to be looked upon favorably for certain grants.
Next question.
I will say with the infrastructure bill though, there are definitely funds available that will be for, you know, that multimodal paths. And that's going to be, I think that's going to be a huge piece that we'll see happen over the next couple of years. Or funding source you'll see over the next few years.
The next question is on wildlife protection. You know, with 600, 700, 800 acres of land here that's undeveloped, it's certainly a place for habitat and for wildlife. And so the question is, how do we protect the wildlife on this land, and what can we do to improve the habitat for wildlife as well? Who can answer that or provide?
Well, I would say, yeah, happy for anyone to chime in, but certainly that's a top priority. I think it is protected. I mean, there's no access to that land right now. And so as we open it up for public access, we can help guide people to the formal trails, to the rail trail, and to walking paths if we have them, and discourage prohibited uses that are currently happening, like the ATV use, which is having an impact on the habitat and wildlife. And then as Emily mentioned, and feel free to add on, Emily, but some of this land isn't actually legally protected, although again, that's the intention for it to be. So getting that in writing and with deed restrictions will certainly help protect wildlife in the long run.
Patrick, can you talk about how the removal of the dam can affect fish or other aquatic life on the river?
Yeah, so the Ipswich, we're very fortunate. There's only 2 large dams remaining on the main stem of the Ipswich. One is in the town of Ipswich. It's a head of tide dam that is going through permitting right now. The town is working very hard to take it out. And then the next one is this one. So when they're both out, we'll be potentially restoring river herring runs all the way up through here, which is really exciting for anybody that studies river herring. It's also a phenomenon that's been happening in other coastal waterways in New England. The Mystic has seen a tremendous rebound in their herring populations. And when you bring back the river herring, you start bringing back bald eagle families and all sorts of other predators and everything else. So it's an exciting opportunity to do this. But, you know, and aside from the aquatic wildlife, you know, there are wildlife corridors right here. And I do think one of the benefits of opening it up to pedestrian access and passive recreation is that we'll find a way to slow down some of the development and actually allow more habitat to be created here. Whereas right now there might not be happening because of ATV use or construction or anything else. So again, we're very excited about this project.
There was a comment on this question, but there was a comment that ATVs and motorbikes have taken over parts of Willis Woods, and there was concern people stopped taking scouts there because of that use. There was a comment from John Scanna, who is the director of the Linfield Water District, who wanted to make a comment that there is a upcoming discussion of the vision at an upcoming meeting at Town Hall Linfield coming up in December. And I think we could send that information out to the registrants of this email after this meeting.
Great. I think we've gotten through the questions. Thank you, everyone. So now we're doing well. We're just over a little over an hour, gotten through the presentation and the questions. So now we really want to hear from you. That's all that's left. So I'm going to we have a few more questions that'll help us kind of prioritize our next steps and also our action steps. And then we're going to have small group discussions for anyone who's interested in sticking around. Okay. So here, this kind of is the most important question for us. So take your time. Again, you can pick up your smartphone and go to pollev.com/MAPC poll. It's up here at the top of the screen if you forgot it. Oops. My laser pointer is not working, but up here, pollev.com/MAPC poll, or you can click the link in the chat to go to this question. If you're frustrated by any of those things, please enter your response in the chat or email us tomorrow. We're really interested in the feedback on this question. So basically, what are the goals that we should prioritize? Certainly protecting water supply. I didn't even put it as a choice because it's obviously what needs to happen. But as we think about opening up the space to public access and building out trails, what other things should we really be prioritizing? Hopefully we can do all these things. Okay, so I see people still responding. Protecting wetlands and habitat is really important. Permanently protecting that open space, getting deed restrictions, improving and maintaining public walking paths through the area, connecting those walking paths. It's pretty evenly distributed, but certainly protecting wetlands and habitat and protection of open space seem to be highest priority. That's good feedback and certainly consistent with everything we've discussed as a team. I'll just stay here for a few more seconds. Again, if you're having trouble with this, please just email us. Great. Okay, thank you for that feedback. The next question is about access. So Emily started to talk about this, and so this is one of the challenges that we haven't figured out yet, but interested in your thoughts. Hopefully it'll work. Hopefully you see a map on your phone and you can click on it. If not, feel free to do it by chat, but basically Richardson Green could provide access. Maybe we can find access if we have a trail through North Reading on the western side. Options are maybe finding a way to use the existing City of Lynn Bridge, although that's under their jurisdiction, or walking from the Peabody Independence Greenway. Looks like it's a variety of access points. Maybe we can talk about this later in the discussion groups. Seems like people are focusing on Richardson Green though as potential way to access, as well as from the eastern side, maybe the sidewalks from Middleton. As well as over from North Reading too. Thank you for that. This will definitely be a point of discussion for us. Yeah, I like this. So this over here is actually town owned, North Reading town owned. So that's interesting. Someone added a dot there.
Yeah, Ella, I hope the whole southern border, I'm hoping there's quite a few residential streets there. And there's a couple of great potential access for just neighborhoods to be able to walk in. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to develop those as well.
Great. Okay. Next question is also about access. Kind of when we're thinking about access, not only where do we want to access, but how will help our planning. So Katrina's talked about sidewalks from Middleton, so that'll promote walking and biking. But you know, do we want many parking areas, many access points? So there's kind of dispersed impact, or do we want a larger main access point? Obviously, everything will be constrained by just the conditions on the ground. But as we think about the vision and what we want to advance, be interested in how folks are actually going to get to Willis Woods. Okay. So a lot of folks wanting to walk or bike from Linfield and North Reading. So we'll have to think about that western access. And seems like a lot of interest in parking at one of many smaller access points. Great, thank you. Okay, and then finally, what hasn't been discussed? What have we left out? And there's, you know, the question about funding for improvements and maintenance is certainly one of them. So this question, you type in a response. So it'll take a little time for folks to respond, but it's open-ended. So we'll see what kind of things we should be thinking about that we haven't yet talked about this evening as we move ahead with the planning process. And if you're having trouble, feel free to add it to the chat, or again, email us later. Okay, so how this works is people will add answers and you can vote them up or down. So if you agree with something you see, you can vote it up. Yeah, that's a great question. So specific boat access to the river, the role of the golf course in all of this. Great. It's a good question. Conceptual design plans, okay, for the trail and access. Wildlife education sessions. That's interesting. That hasn't come up. Boardwalks and fun features to safely cross wetland areas. That makes sense. Info areas, kind of similar to the wildlife education. Great, that hasn't come up yet. Connectivity to the center of Linfield via other public and water district lands or substantial sidewalks. So biking and walking access to Linfield Center. Let's see if scrolling works. Great, this is really helpful. We have not yet discussed some of these topics. Interesting. Any local trolleys, bus routes that might include this as a stop? Perhaps the T could be brought into the discussion at some point. Really rising to the top is boat access to the river, boardwalks and fun features, overall open access for all towns to protect wildlife and support water use, which is basically the overall goal. Okay. Well, thank you all. I think that's the last question. So now we have time, and again, it's only 8:15. So 15 or 20 minutes for a small group discussion. If you're interested, if you have more to share, if you'd like to dig into some of those great suggestions in the last question about additional things that we should be considering that the project team hasn't yet discussed, or anything else, concerns that we didn't bring up that we should really be thinking about, or opportunities we should really be thinking about. If you're not interested in the small group discussion, we understand. Thank you so much for attending this evening. Please check out, we have a project webpage up, and you can sign up for updates there. If someone could add that link to the chat, that would be great. And thank you so much, Jennifer and Sue from Linfield, for getting that webpage up. We'll start drafting the vision plan, including action steps, in the next several weeks. So look out for updates, and want to thank you all so much. But please stick around because we will be entering small groups. So if you've never done this before, it's very easy. You just sit still, and we will send a facilitator and a note taker into a small group. So I think we can start doing that, Christian. And what will happen is a window will pop up on your screen, and you just say, here, I'll stop my screen share. Hi, everyone. A window will pop up on your screen, and you just press accept. And then you don't need to do anything else. Don't leave Zoom. Don't close out. Don't change your audio. You'll just be sent into a different room with fewer folks. And then you can have this discussion. And again, one of the project partners will facilitate the discussion. It's pretty open, informal, and someone will be taking notes so that we can share with the larger group. But this is really just a time. We've talked about a lot already this evening. If there's anything else we haven't talked about, or feedback that you feel like you haven't been able to provide.
All right, so I am going to open the rooms now. So like Ella said, you should see something pop up on your screen, and then we will be ready to go. All right. All right, thanks everybody. It's always somewhat of a jolt to be brought back into the main room, so hopefully that wasn't in the middle of anybody talking, but feel free to finish your comment in the chat. We had a little bit of a smaller group go into breakouts than normal, so I actually condensed one of them into some other breakouts. So Emily, in your breakout, if you would be willing to just give us a quick summary of what you talked about, that'd be great.
Geez, I wasn't the note taker, but
or Danielle, if you want to. Yeah, that's probably better.
Oh, sure. I was the note taker. We had a few number of comments about general interest and excitement about having a connection to and access to a new conservation area, questions about access, questions about Bostic and how that might work, what kind of relationship we have and how that may move ahead, how nice it is to have a number of regional, kind of highlights to destinations. Ipswich River Park was brought up in North Reading as a nice destination that can be along, a regional, Greenway or trail network. And certainly there are others in the region, and some other possibilities mentioned for winter uses like cross-country skiing. I think I covered some of the basics, but
awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Danielle. And Patrick or Katrina, any major themes from your group?
Sure, I took some notes here. I think we only had one person other than the team, but he gave us a lot of good information. He's glad to see the professional assistance with this very large project. He doesn't think it'll take too much attention away from other big projects like the rail trail, but that is a worry, because Linfield is working on their rail trail right now. He thinks the real value of Richardson Green is a gateway to Willis Woods, but also he feels that Richardson Green is maybe a little too far away from the town center, and it'd be great if they could find access to Willis Woods that's closer to the town center. And so we talked about that finger of land that comes down south of Sagamore Golf Course, and I think it's the entrance to the well fields, but there may be a lot of wetlands there. So, you know, we're just talking about if that could be an access, because I guess there's no sidewalks along that stretch. And so anyone accessing Willis Woods would have to drive, unfortunately. And I think that's it. I don't know, Patrick, can you think of anything else that was said that I didn't cover?
You're on, yeah.
Yeah. No, we pulled up the map and we're looking at that site area, and also looking at possibly the golf course itself as being an access point to get around those wetlands would be one opportunity to explore.
Awesome. All right, thank you all. Ella, any other last notes to add before we do closing?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you all so much for attending, and look out for updates.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ella. I mean, this was really well run. I'm impressed. I'm happy to be part of the team.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. And I look forward to more meetings and making progress and having a good vision in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.